Hey guys, good afternoon. Sorry, I think like 2 minutes late. I was having a couple of technical difficulties. All right, so it's Friday, it's 12:02 p.m. and I'm going to go over with you the questions that I posted this week, math questions for us to practice, okay? All right, here we go. If 40% is equal to the fraction x over 30, what is the value of x? Okay, so this question tends to be a little bit confusing because it gives us a percent and it's asking us to compare it to a fraction. So what we would want to do is say 40% equals x over 30. But in reality, a percent is something out of 100. Okay, so this would have to be 40 out of 100 equals x over 30. Okay, so when we want to compare a percent to something, we have to put it over 100 like this. Another thing that we can do is turn it into a decimal, which is simply dividing it by 100 also. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing. So now that we converted that, what do we do? What do we do with this? Well, we cross multiply. Whenever we have two fractions that are equal to each other like this, we just cross multiply. So we could do 100 times x is 100x. 40 times 30, I'm going to show you a little kind of like trick here. 4 times 3 is 12. And then for every 0 behind those two numbers, 1, 2, we'll add a 0 there. Okay, that makes multiplying large numbers a lot faster. And we always want to work faster on the ASVAB and still get things right, right? All right, we divide now by 100. This cancels out. I can cancel out zeros on the top and bottom that are in common. And I get x equals 12 over 1, which is just x equals 12. So if you answer D for this question, you are correct, okay? Hope that made sense. If not, always remember you can leave me a comment below. Let's keep going. Let me clear this up actually. All right, now we can keep going. All right, next question. I gave you guys more ratio questions this week. We did go over a couple of ratio questions last week. So I wanted to make sure you're comfortable with them. We got some extra questions on ratios this week. Anyway, let's get started. It says Andrea, Jocelyn, and Tamara decide to share a bag of chocolate in a 1:2:4 ratio. If there are 91 chocolates in a bag, how many chocolates did Jocelyn eat? So with this ratio, remember, we want to figure out, okay, we want to put this in a proportion, but we got to figure out what information goes into that proportion. So we're going to organize all the information for this ratio. So we have Andrea, Jocelyn, Tamara. Okay, in a 1:2:4 ratio. This is part to part to part. Why is it part to part to part? It's part to part to part because Andrea eats a part, Jocelyn eats a part, Tamara eats a part, okay? So we need to add these up to find the whole. So I'm going to call that TO for total, okay? 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 4 is 7, and that is our total. Now, why do we do that? Because the 91 chocolates in the bag represents the total number in the bag. And we cannot compare that to Andrea, Jocelyn, or Tamara, because none of them ate the total. So we have to find the total to be able to compare the total. So the 91 will be compared to the 7 total, okay? And we're looking for how many Jocelyn eats. So we're going to put an X under here. Remember, this first step is just us organizing the information to figure out what are we going to put in a proportion. This step shows us we're not going to use Andrea's information. We're not going to use Tamara's information. We're only using Jocelyn's information and the total, okay? So let's set up our two fractions in our proportion. The first fraction is going to come from our ratio. So we're going to have 2 Jocelyn over 7 total. That's our ratio, 2 and 7, okay? And we're going to compare it to the actual bag of chocolates. We don't know how much Jocelyn eats, so we're going to call that X, but we know that there's 91 total. These letters, J's, and the TOs that I put are just for us to make sure we're putting all the information in the correct place. You can basically ignore those after we're done with putting stuff in the right place, okay? So we're going to ignore those, and now we're just going to do 7 times X is 7X. 91 times 2, let's find it over here. That's 218, okay? We're going to do 182. We're going to divide by 7. And now 182 divided by 7 is 7 goes into 18 2 times. That's 14. Subtract, bring down the 2. 42 divided by 7 is 6. 42, subtract, I get 0. So that means that Jocelyn eats 26 chocolates. So if you answered B for this question this week, very good job. You got it, okay? Once again, I hope that made sense. If it didn't, don't worry, just leave me a comment and I'll be more than happy to help you and explain that a little bit better, okay? All right, next one. Here we go. Another ratio. I told you I wanted to give you ratio questions this week. Okay, so it says Jesse, Lewis, and Chris got paid a total of $210 for mowing neighborhood lawns. They split the money in the ratio of 1 to 2 to 4. How much less did Jesse make than Chris? So once again, we have a ratio that has 3 parts, but when we look at what the question is actually asking us for, it's telling us that we have to find how much less one made than the other, which means we have to find the difference, which means we have to subtract, okay? Which also means that we have to find 2 different people. It's not just one person this time, okay? So we gotta find Jesse and we gotta find Chris. All right, so let's start setting up our ratio to see what information we're gonna use and so on and so forth. So we have Jesse, Lewis, Chris. These are all parts. So we're gonna put a T over here for total, okay? We know that Jesse got 1, Lewis got 2, and Chris got 4. When we add these up, we get 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 4 is 7. So we have part to part to whole, or total, okay? Now, it says here that they got paid a total of $210, all of them together, which means this number will be compared to our total. And now we're going to look for Jesse. Let's call him X. And we're going to look for Chris. But Chris is different, so we can't call him X. We're going to call him Y. All right, which means we're not using Lewis's information. Now, this is where it gets a little bit confusing, but I just want to clear it up for you. We are not going to find X and Y at the same time. We have to do 2 different proportions. So we're going to do 1 proportion to find X, and then once we find X, we'll do another proportion to find Y, okay? So let's just do it real quick. Let's start with X. So that's 1 Jesse over 7 total equals X Jesse over 210 total. We multiply, 7 times X is 7X, 1 times 210 is 210. We divide by 7 to get the X by itself. 210 divided by 7. 21 divided by 7 is 3. 21. Bring down that 0, so this is 0. So that means X is 30, or in other words, Jesse made $30. Okay? Now that we have that, let's take a look at what Chris made. So I'm going to make a little more space here. Chris is 4C over 7 total. Remember, we always start with a ratio. That's our first fraction. Our second fraction is going to be Y Chris, because we don't know how much he makes, over 210 total. So we're going to cross multiply. 7 times Y is 7Y. 4 times 210, let's do that over here. So we get 0, 4, 8, 840. And we're going to divide by 7. So we're going to do 840 divided by 7. That's 1, 2. We still have to bring down that 0, 0. That means that Chris made $120. Okay. So now that we have that, let's go back to our question. It says, how much less did Jesse make than Chris? Which means, what's the difference between them? So we have to do Chris, which made 120, minus Jesse, which made 30, and that gives us $90. And that is our answer. So be careful with that, because when you do this very quickly and you think, oh, I just have to find Jesse, and you find Jesse, that is an answer choice, but it's the incorrect answer choice. Or if you found Chris because you like read over it fast and didn't notice it was that you have to subtract, Chris is right here. So the reason I say that is be careful. As soon as you solve for things, you should always go back and reread the question, okay? Maybe not the whole thing, but the last bit where it actually says, hey, this is what we want from you, okay? So that's just something to keep in mind to make sure that you're always getting the question right. All right, here we go. Last question. Okay. If one of the angles of a right triangle is 30 degrees, what are the other two angles? Okay, so this is a little sneak peek into geometry. First of all, it says a right triangle. What does a right triangle look like? All right, here we go. We're gonna go for one of my famous drawings. This is not my forte. I will stick to math. Okay, here we go. It's like this and like this, okay? One of the angles in a right triangle is 90 degrees. That is by definition of a right triangle. Now it says one of the angles is 30 degrees. So we already know one is 90 and we know another one is 30, okay? So our answer is going to be 90 degrees and whatever this one is right here. All right, so what else do we need to know to be able to answer this question? The other thing we need to know to be able to answer this question is that all the angles in a triangle always add up to 180 degrees, okay? It could be 20, 140, 30, 50, 100, okay? All of them have to add up to 180 degrees. So far, we know we have 90 and we have 30 in this triangle. That gives us 120. How much more do we need to get to 180? We can subtract, and that gives us 60 degrees, which means this angle right here is 60 degrees, okay? So our answer is going to be 60 and 90. So this kind of question is more commonly seen in like the mathematics knowledge section. It's not like difficult math, you just really need to know all of these concepts from geometry. All right, guys, that is our last question for today. Thank you for tuning in and watching this video. I hope everything I went over today was helpful for you. Remember, if you like going over the questions like this, we do this with our group, with our course, 3 times a week. The next couple, obviously next week and the following week is a holiday, so we're only meeting twice a week. But generally speaking, we meet 3 times a week, okay? So if you want to do this more often, leave me a comment below, or you can send a message to our ASVAB Success page, and we'll be more than happy to tell you more about how you can join in on a class, okay? Good luck as you keep studying, and have a great weekend.